Welcome to another episode of the Metal Matt Podcast. In today's episode, we'll be talking about a movie that I greatly love, that I greatly enjoy. Weird Al Yankovic's UHF, and that's going to be a very fun episode. It's going to be a very fun movie to talk about. But first, it's time to give a couple of shout-outs. First, I want to give a shout-out to Spanky and G's Movie Mayhem. Great podcast. Definitely check them out. Very, very good. Have a lot of chemistry together, and just great. It's just really enjoyable podcast. They talk about all kinds of movies. They talked about Jack Frost and Pinocchio's Revenge and Big Lebowski, and they just talk about all types of stuff, and it's a really enjoyable podcast, so definitely check them out. And I also give another shout out to Chucky's Playground, one of the best sites. No, actually the best site on the internet right now. And we're actually going to launch our official website, standalone website, September 24th. So it's very exciting for all of us here at the Playground. Just really enjoy. We cannot wait for the 24th. We cannot wait for next Wednesday, I believe. That's what it is. Hold on, let me see. Let me check the calendar. Yep, it is next Wednesday. So we only have about 8 days left. And it's just... or 7 days, by the time you hear this podcast, because this podcast is on Wednesday. I'm recording on Tuesday, but anyway, so next week we're getting the website, and it's just going to be very fun. It's going to be a huge day for all of us on the Playground, and we cannot wait for next week. And hopefully you'll like it, because we've been working on this for quite a while, and it's just going to be very enjoyable. And so now it is time to shoot the shuffle. At number 1, Brace Yourself by Brides of Destruction from Here Comes the Brides. This is a supergroup that's no longer around. It had Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue in it, Tracy Guns of LA Guns in it, and just a pretty good song from their debut album. Number 2, Love to Love by UFO from Lights Out. Great ballad by UFO, who's a great rock band. Number 3, Caught Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden from Somewhere in Time. Great band, and this is actually a pretty good album. There's a lot of good songs on here, like Wasted Years and Alexander the Great and Stranger in a Strange Land, stuff like that. And this one is a great opening to the album. Number 4, Psycho Holiday by Pantera from Cowboys from Hell. Probably my favorite song from the Cowboys from Hell album. It's really good. Number 5, The End by the Beatles from Abbey Road. Again, really good album. Probably the most famous album cover of all time. And this is the proper ending to the album, and it's really good. Number 6, Space Lord by Monster Magnet from Power Trip. Space Lord, mother. It's a really good song, maybe my favorite Monster Magnet song from a great album, Power Trip. Number 7, Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd from Wish You Were Here. Great album, as well as great song about Syd Barrett, I believe, and it's really good. Number 8, Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath from Paranoid. I especially like the vocals on here. The vocals are really interesting to listen to. Very futuristic, especially for something like 1970. And it's pretty interesting to listen to. Number 9, Young, Dumb, and Ugly by Weird Al Yankovic from Alapalooza. This is Al's AC/DC style parody, and it's decent. And finally, number 10, Cadillac Dreams by Kiss from Hot in the Shade. This is an alright song. It's not that great. Hot in the Shade, it's an okay album. It's not the greatest Kiss album in the world, but for what it is, it's a solid album. And so that's all for Shoot the Shuffle, and now it's time to talk about today's project. And today's project we're going to be talking about is UHF. Back in the 80s, it seemed like Weird Al could do it all. His music was just as great as always. His music videos were possibly even better, usually directly parodying his original parodies that he was parodying. But the question was, could he make it in a movie? Well, this is what we're going to find out today. UHF was released on July 21st, 1989 by Orion Pictures. And the question was, we all knew that Weird Al could do a parody songs, and we all knew that he could do some funny music videos, but could he carry a full-length movie? Well, that's the question we're going to find out. So let's get down to brass tacks, because it is time to talk about UHF. Now, Weird Al plays George Newman, and he constantly daydreams. He has all these fantasies. And the film actually starts out with a parody of Raiders of the Lost Ark, with him trying to capture the Academy Award. And there's moments of that throughout the film, and I'll talk about those later on. And he and his friend Bob are fired from Burger World. And I think after that, his gambling Uncle Harvey, he wins the deed to a bankrupt television station, a UHF station. And this is how you know it was made in '89, because there were still like local television stations. Nowadays it's all like satellite and digital and whatnot, but back in the day, But Harvey decides to give control of Channel 62 to George. And George and Bob meet all the staff, and they're pretty interesting people. They have a receptionist and a wannabe reporter, Pamela Finkelstein, played by Fran Drescher. You might call her voice hot. You might call her voice annoying. I call it hot. And they have a dwarf photojournalist, a cameraman, Noodles McIntosh. I love that name, Noodles McIntosh. And they also have an engineer, kind of a mad scientist type person named Philo. And just pretty interesting people there. And they also meet the VHF network station, the rival VHF station. And it's run by R.J. Fletcher, who is probably one of the most over-the-top villains I think I've ever seen in a movie. Like, it's pretty kind of ridiculous, but really funny at the same time. He just yells at like the top of his lungs, like, "Get out!" And, and stuff like that. And there's one line in here that's like my favorite line, one of my favorite lines in like any movie, and it's my favorite line in this movie. And he's like, "I can't believe the incompetence in this place. People like that should be put to sleep." And it's like, who would say that? It's so dark, but at the same time, Weird Al, who wrote the movie, with his man Dry Blade, like, it's kind of like his brand of dark humor, So, yeah, it's just, that's a really funny, dark line as well. And he encounters Stanley Spadowski, played by Michael Richards, and he was fired by R.J. Fletcher for really no reason. He was accused of stealing something, but it turned out he had been in the seat of his desk chair the whole time. So George offers him a job at Channel 62, and George decides to create new shows. And but the workload, the station, it just doesn't do well at first. And he forgets his girlfriend Terry's birthday, and they break up. And Uncle Nutsy's Clubhouse, the name actually comes from an old Mad Magazine article, I believe. And he and Bob decide to give the show to Stanley. And it's renamed Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse, and it's like just it just becomes like a huge success, And they come up with more original shows. It's just like silly titles, but it's really funny. And Channel 62 eventually becomes number one in the ratings. And there's a kind of R.J. Fletcher is not happy with this. And one of the funniest lines here, I'm trying to think of exactly how it leads to it. Like, okay, RJ is given, like, a gift for Father's Day. And RJ wants a Rolex, and it's not a Rolex. And somebody comes into the office and tells him about Channel 62. And he's like, RJ's just like, "What are you doing? Get out of my office!" And he's like, "Take that ridiculous thing off." And it's important to note that this guy has, like, a really crazy cowboy hat with, like, a raccoon tail on the back of it. And he also has a mustache. And he kind of looks at it for a few seconds, and then he just rips the mustache off. It's a classic, bait and switch, and it's really funny. One of my favorite jokes in this movie. But Fletcher decides to make Harvey an offer for covering his debt to Big Louie, who is his bookie, I guess. I really don't know how gambling works or anything like that. So he, in return, he gets ownership of Channel 62. And at the time of the film, he legally couldn't own two stations in the same town. So he decides to just turn into like a laundromat or something like that. And so Channel 62 decides to hold a telethon for Channel 62. And a bunch of goons for Channel 8, they go ahead and actually kidnap Stanley. And but eventually, Cooney, who is like the karate expert in this movie, he and his goons save Stanley and George, who ends up going there to try and save Stanley, and the station's theirs. And he and Terry get back together. Fletcher gets fired, and trying to remember. Oh, Philo is revealed to be an alien, which is like it really just comes out of nowhere, but it's very funny. And just one problem with this movie is that Weird Al plays George, a character named George Newman, and that's cool, but personally, I just couldn't separate the character from Weird Al. I just felt like Weird Al was just playing himself, which is not a bad thing, but I just couldn't get myself into the mind frame of the George character. I was always, looking at the character as Weird Al and not as a character, but that's fine, And throughout the movie, there's a lot of cutaway scenes, and there are homages to like popular shows. There's a music video for Weird Al's "Money for Nothing" parody, and it's really there for no reason, kinda, but it's still pretty funny. And actually, all the commercials here, they're all there for a reason, like they're either commercials for U62 or they're just figments of George's imagination, and it's built up that he's a daydreamer, so it does make sense. It doesn't come out of nowhere. And this is where I'm about to go on a rant, and the rant is on Family Guy, and it's just Family Guy really loves to do cutaway gags a lot, and most of the time they really don't make sense at all. It's like they just do them just to do them. And one time on Family Guy, they aired an entire music video for Mick Jagger and David Bowie's cover of "Dancing in the Street." They aired like the entire video for no reason at all, and that's what I don't like about Family Guy, when they just do it just to do it, or just to fill time. Like Family Guy, it can be a good show, it can be funny. At least back in the day. But nowadays, they're just kind of like riding the waves, just kind of, just trying to fill time. It's just not as entertaining, as it used to be. And it's kind of like that old Planes, Trains, and Automobiles line.
Here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
That's what it feels like, watching Family Guy. It just doesn't have a point in terms of its cutaways. They just do it just to do it. And that's what really annoys me about Family Guy. But anyway, back to UHF. Just a little rant there. But in this one, it all makes sense because it's all for the channel 62, or for George's imagination. And the commercials are really funny. Like, Plots Are Us, mortuary service. That's really funny, really dark, kind of that Weird Al signature dark humor. And Conan the Librarian, that's pretty funny as well. Spatula City is great. It kind of has like that classic commercial, kind of like intentionally bad acting. It's like, where's the spatula? It's like, oh, let's go, kids. And it's really funny. And my favorite fake commercial in this movie, Gandhi 2. That is a really funny commercial. And it really does treats Gandhi like Shaft. And like, it even has like the Shaft music playing in the background. And it's just really, really funny. And it just treats him like as a total awesome guy. It's just like Gandhi is carrying a machine gun, he's eating steak. It's just really funny, So, yeah. So anyway, that's really it for UHF. There's not a whole lot to this movie. Oh, whoa, hold on. Before I do that, Raw's Wild Kingdom, I need to talk about Raw's Wild Kingdom. There's a couple of scenes that are really funny. Raw's Wild Kingdom is funny, and it's basically a guy in this apartment just showing off all these animals he has. And like, it's pretty much implied that he pretty much abuses the animals, because he shows off like this ant farm that he has, and he's like, man, they hate it when you do this, and he just like shakes up the ant farm. And then he actually throws poodles out the window. Like, it's so dark, but pretty funny at the same time. Very dark, but it's kind of played for laughs. And then there's another scene where Joe Early, a high school shop teacher, is on Town Talk with George Newman, and he's demonstrating on how hacksaw works, table saw. It's demonstrating how a table saw works, and he actually cuts off his thumb by accident. And again, just very dark humor. This movie isn't a dark comedy, but it has elements of kind of dark comedy, like that. And this is really, really funny. And there's also a commercial for Town Talk near the end, where Town Talk becomes like a Jerry Springer style trash TV, kind of talk show, where it has like the devil on it, and it has like all these serial killers, and just stuff like that. And it's a really clever and funny parody, And the Cooney character is really funny as well, he hosts the Wheel of Fish game show, and that's pretty funny as well. And the Cooney character, his catchphrase was, "So stupid!" It's just really funny, So that's really all for UHF. There's not a whole lot to really talk about. It's pretty much exactly what you would expect it to be. Exactly what you would expect a Weird Al movie to be. It has a lot of parody in it, and it's all done extremely well. And it's a really funny movie. Overall, UHF is a really funny movie. While there are some kind of parts that kind of are DOA every now and then, it's a really funny movie. And it's just, it's pretty much Weird Al doing what Weird Al does. A lot of great parodies of film and even music. It's just really, really funny. And so if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's very good and it's really funny. So that's all for this episode of the Melmat Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And this Friday on the Melmat Podcast, we're going to be talking about a band that is a little bit controversial. We're going to be doing a retrospective on Metallica. So that ought to be very interesting, and I'll see you Friday.